In this tutorial, you're gonna learn how to make gadgets in RetroGadgets. I and many others has already made cool gadgets. So for the sake of learning, don't feel ashamed to copy another person's code, as no one in the community is against copying. In fact, this is actually how I and many others learned how to make gadgets. I did say that you can copy, but there's one thing you cannot do, which is stealing. Anyways, enjoy the tutorial. Alright, I hope that when you first boot up RetroGadgets, you see this screen over here. And I hope your multi-tool is open. This is our multi-tool. In the multi-tool, this is where we code stuff. This is where we view Steam Workshop gadgets as well, as you can see over here. But we're not actually gonna explore that. What instead we're gonna do is make gadgets. So you see this blue handlebar over here? Just do that. We have a lot of stuff on our desk. Over here is our soldering iron. This is what you use to merge boards together. This is the spray paint. If you wanna color things, it's useful. Here is our archive drawer. This is where all your gadgets are gonna be in, whether it's the Steam Workshop gadgets or your own gadgets. This is where you find stuff. Alright, this is boards over here. There's a variety of shapes that you could choose from. So yeah. Over here is all the 31 modules currently in RetroGadgets, ranging from LEDs, screens, chips, buttons. We have a lot of stuff right here. Alright, I'm gonna advise you to put 4 boards on the table. Just drag and drop these 4 squares like this. Pro tip is when you have a shape like this, and if you want to rotate it, you just drag it and right click. That makes it rotate. And if you want to delete it, just put it back to the board like that. Alright, so as you can see, our gadget is not really merged. It's just like, it's weird, right? We want to merge it. So what I told you before is that the soldering iron merged things up. So we're just gonna use our soldering iron like that. I accidentally opened the gadget over here, but if you want to open your gadget, you press this thing over here. And if you want to put it back on our gadget, press the lid again, like that. Okay, let's put some modules inside this. So I wanna put the most important component when you're making gadgets. That's the CPU chip. Without the CPU chip, you can't make gadgets. Before that, I'm just gonna open this gadget and put a CPU chip. But I don't actually wanna put the CPU chip on the front here. I wanna put it on the back. Press this arrow here to flip the board, and let's put our CPU chip there. The other thing that I wanna have is the video chip. The video chip is a must if you want to have screens for your gadget, because I'm gonna put screens later. Let's press this arrow again and actually put screens. That's on the output. I'm gonna put 2 big screens and 2 smaller ones below, like that. If we close our gadget, you can see that the screens are not connected together. Press Shift to zoom in and make the screens really close to each other to make them stick. That's gonna merge the screens together. If you put screens, what I'd advise you to do is open up the multi-tool and press the screens. When you press the screen on our multi-tool over here, it shows the video chip's properties. And I want to assign screen 0 to video chip 0. And do that for the other screens as well. Now the screens are connected to the video chip. Let's actually code stuff. To do that, go over on your multi-tool and go to Edit Page. When you press Edit, you go into the Assets. Let's press the CPU0.lua over here. Alright, let's actually get you started on your very first line of code. That is printing Hello World. Okay, so let's press this power button over here. As you can see, it prints Hello World. Now I assume that you already know other programming languages, so I won't really dive much deeper into how you code. I'm just gonna focus on the essentials. So, how about writing a variable? To make a variable, we need to define the variable. So we put local, the variable name, and the value that you want to assign. In our case, I'm gonna assign var to 1. Alright, let's make another variable. This time, let's work with booleans. So var2 is equal to true. Alright, the other data types out there is table. So let's define a table on our var3. We use curly brackets with this. The other data type we can define is strings. Strings in Lua is very simple. We just do local. Actually, I'm just gonna rename this to 4 and make this var3. So you define strings by putting colons. Inside, I'm gonna put 3. And what would I do is copy this var3 and put it here. Alright, let's try printing them. So print var, this should return 1. Of course we do. var2 should return true. Of course, var3 should return 3. And var4 should return a table. Hold on, what happened here? What is this? In Lua, you can't really print the whole table itself. You need to specify what kind of index you want to grab. In Lua, the first item is index 1. So I want to grab that. Put square brackets and inside put 1. This is gonna grab the first element on our table, which is 1. Let's do that for 3. And this should return 3, as you can see. This is because it's grabbing the 3 variable, and variable 3 is 3. Confusing. Let's use the concept of variables and assign modules that we put the gadget. And I actually forgot to add buttons on our gadget. So let me just do that. Go over on input and find a button you like. If you go on the multi-tool and press this button is called LED button 0. Let's add another button and see what its name. This should be button 1. Yes, indeed. So if you want to access these buttons in the code itself, what you want to do is type in gdt.ledbutton0 or 1. This line of code refers to this button over here. And instead of naming it var, I'm gonna name it button. Alright. So now we have our button variable. Go ahead and type in button. And I want you to press dot and find LED state by pressing the down arrow. As you can see, LED state wants to be Boolean. So we're gonna make it true in our case, because I believe it's false now. And see what happens. It lights up. Cool. Now let's see what other properties button has. Let's go button, again, dot LED color, and this requires a color input. Alright, I'm gonna set this equal to color dot red. This is how you specify color. Oh, it's actually red before. I'm gonna make this green. Alright, it's green now. Note that typing gdt.LED_0.LED color actually does the same thing. It's just much shorter because we assign button to be our keyword. Alright, enough of that. Let's assign other modules like the CPU or the video chip here and make it comprehensible and shorter in our code. Vid is equal to gdt.vid, or local CPU is equal gdt.cpu. This is just a neat way to shorten your code. I actually don't want the button 1, so I'm just gonna delete it by dropping it here and rearrange the button 0 like this. I want to color the thing in yellow, so grab your spray paint and press yellow. Of course, you can choose whatever color you want. One pro tip is that when you press X, it changes your brush type. This goes vertically and this goes horizontally. Alright. Note that you can individually color your buttons as well by having the brush turn into a dot and press it. Cool! Let's actually put something to the screen. I want to draw a circle, so let's define a variable for our circle. Local position of circle is equal to vec2 0 0. We use the keyword vec2 to refer to a coordinate in the xy plane. Let's make another variable for the radius of the circle. I'm gonna set that to 8. Let's make a variable for the color of the circle. I'm gonna make that color red. Alright, go over on our update function and type in vid. Note that vid is just short for gdt.videochip0, and when you press dot, it shows you all the properties out there. We're interested in draw circle. This draws a circle, as the name applies. If you go read this, it needs a position, radius, and color. And we actually defined that earlier, and let's actually put it here. So, position of circle, the radius of circle, and the color of circle. As you can see, our single line of code is very long enough to show this horizontal scroll bar. And the one thing I really hate in this world is very long lines of code. So let's actually fix that. Go over here and press this and press enter. Press tab to introduce 4 spaces and go to the end of the line and press here and press space. Now backspace to align it in this line, and I want you to press here, press enter, press here, press enter. Now this might look very cursed to you, but it's just personal preference. I just prefer it this way. Alright, let's actually run our gadget and see what's happening. Would you look at that? It's actually in the very top left on our kernel. It's not actually in the center. This is because vec200 actually refers to the very top left on the corner. If you want to display something in the center, we need to define what center is. So I'm gonna go here and put a new line of code. I'm gonna do local center x equals to vid dot width divided by 2 and local center y is equal to vid dot height divided by 2. And I'm gonna replace 0 with center x and center y. Alright, let's run our code. Now our circle is in the center. Great! Let's actually move on. Let's add another circle. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this line of code, 3 lines of code to be exact, and paste it here. I'm gonna add the variables the number 2 and change some properties like 10, size, and green. Let's do that. As you can see, nothing really appears because we need to copy and paste the draw circle too to make another circle. And let's add 2 to the things and press the power button. As you can see, there's another circle. Let's go to the position of circle 2 and add 10. It moved to the right. Alright. I want the y value more down. So to make it move down, I'm gonna minus 10. Let's make this minus 20 for our example. And press the power button. Wait a second, I'm minus 20, but why does it move up? This is another problem with RetroGadgets, that positive values actually make your things go down. To verify that, I'm gonna plus this by 20. So as you can see, the circle moved down by 20 pixels. At the current state of our code, there's actually a really big problem that we need to solve. If we want to draw more circles, that means we have to copy and paste code, and that's really counterintuitive. Instead, what we're gonna do is let's treat one ball an object and put it to a table. To do that, I'm gonna rewrite the whole thing. Let's delete these line of codes and define what a circle should be. Let's delete the code here too, because we're gonna start from start. Alright, let's make a table called circle table. And this doesn't have to be having a big letter in the first. Let's just make it small. Set this equal to vec2 center x and y. This just put it to the center. And I feel like this is gonna be a really long code, so let's actually split it up. Alright, let's continue on. Press comma and press enter. Now I wanna define something that you might not know what I'm typing, but I might just type it anyway. Vec2 0 0. And actually, with tables, you can actually label things. Like for example, this is supposed to be our position. So what you can do is name that like that. Pos is equal to vec2 something something. Now, if you are worried on how to access this pos, we actually just do it like this. Type in circle table. Hold on, I'm just gonna print this. I'm gonna wrap it around print. Type circle table and square brackets, and inside just put the string pos. And let's actually turn on our gadget. As you can see, we get 64 and 50. I'm assuming that that's actually our center XY, but what the hell are these? These are not meant to be here. I think what I need to do is label this as well. So I'm gonna label this as velocity vector for now. And let's press enter. Again, we get 64, 50, 0, 0. I have no idea why it displays 64, 50, 0, 0, but I'm assuming that when you print a vec2, it's gonna return something like this. Okay, for our third value in pair is I want to define what color it is. So color is equal to, for now, color red. Alright, let's delete this and draw this circle in the screen. Let's access the table's content. Circle table dot pause circle table dot we didn't define the radius, so I'm just gonna press 8 over here. And here we go circle table dot color. And this got really long, so I'm just gonna split it. Let's press enter and see our circle over here. There's a mistake that I did, is that I need to wrap this inside a table as well, like that. Now as you can see, this got red. That's gonna give us an error. That is because we are not accessing this inside this thing. What we need to do now is go here and type in circle table, square brackets, inside 1. This refers to the first item in the table, which is our first circle. Go here, press dot, go to pause, let's define the radius as 8, and circle table, square brackets, 1, dot color, split it apart, and run our gadget. And as you can see, we see our circle over here. Let's actually add a second circle to our table. We do that by just copy and pasting this. Let's copy and paste that. And as you can see, it gave us an error. That is because we need a comma here. So as you can imagine, this is our first circle and this is our second circle. Cool. Now let's press the power button. You can see that it's not displaying the first circle. That is because they have the exact position and the exact radius. So I'm just gonna change that. So let's move things by left and change the color a little bit. And press the power button. You can see that it's not actually displaying anything. That is because we are actually not drawing it in the screen. So go over here and copy and paste it. And change the values to 2. This is referring to the second item in our table. Boom! We got, wait, that's weird. Oh, I actually figured it out. If I make this like 10 or something, you can actually see the red circle is there. It somehow didn't move the green to the right. I think that is because we accidentally changed the velocity vector to x to 30 instead of the vec2 over here. Let's plus this by 30 to move it to the left. I'm sorry that I said left all the time, but what I meant is I want to move things to the right, like that. Alright, as you can see, this is counterintuitive as well. That because when we add more circles in our table, we would copy and paste draw circle again. That is very counterintuitive. So what we do instead is we want the program to automatically scan how many items in the table and draw things in the screen for us. To do that, we're gonna use a for loop. Now this is gonna be really hard to understand if you are a beginner in programming, but if you know a little bit of programming, you could pick this up very well. To do this, we're gonna type for I, comma, circle in I pairs inside of this circle table do. And we need to indent these and close it with end. Let's actually replace 1 with I and press the power button, and you can see it actually draws the circles for us. To prove this, I'm gonna add another element to the circle table and put a comma here. And instead of plus 30, I'm gonna minus 20 and put the circle downwards. Would you look at that? It made another circle, and I might wanna change its colors too. Let's put yellow. Boom! Great! If we want to add things to our table, it's actually kinda tedious to go here and copy and paste that. Let's actually fix that by making a function. The function that I want to make is called insert circle. Go over here and type in function. This tells the program that we want to define a function. I'm gonna name this function called insert circle. For now, I'm gonna leave the parameters empty. And to close a function, just type end. And inside this, we could return something. Or in this case, we're not gonna return something, because this function is just creating a new circle for our table. To insert something into the table, we type in table.insert. And this takes two arguments. The first argument is our table, so circle table. The second argument is the thing that you want to put inside. In our case, it's this thing over here. We want a new circle. Alright, let's actually go here and press space. This looks very cumbersome for now, so let's actually Control Z this. And before this, we are gonna make a local variable. When you make a local variable inside insert circle, the variable will only take effect inside. It won't really affect in a global scale. I'm gonna name the variable for now called circle. Simple enough. And let's paste in the table here. Make a few adjustments to make it look nice. Like that. And here, just type in circle. Now, it might be a really good time to define the parameters. What parameters I want is position, velocity, and color. Since the parameter position is conflicting with position over here, I'm gonna name the parameter differently. I'm gonna name it XY. And the same thing goes for color. I'm gonna just call this RGB. Alright, so what I would wanna do is, instead of setting the position to vector to center X and center Y, I'm gonna define is as XY. And instead of vec to 0, 0, I'm gonna replace it with velocity. Instead of color red, I'm gonna replace it to RGB. Alright. Let's go over here and let's test our new function called insert circle. I want the position to be vec to 40, 50, with the velocity of 0, 0, and color dot magenta. And let's see what happens. As you can see, it added a new circle, and it's actually magenta. So we did prove that this code works. Cool. Now I'm gonna take a break. Alright, this is the next day of the recording. Let's continue on our coding journey. As you can see, this button over here doesn't really do anything. Let's actually apply something to make it do something. What I want to do is, if I press this button over here, I want it to spawn random circles on the screen. To do that, let's actually make a new function called button press. And inside this button press, I want you to type if button dot state, which is a boolean, is equal to true, then and end. Inside this if statement, I want you to copy and paste this and put it inside. For now, when you press the button, it's gonna spawn a circle on x40 and y50. We'd want this to be random. So this is a really good time to tell you about the math library. To access the math library, just type in math and follow that with dot. Here, we see a lot of math functions. What we're really interested in is the random function. The random function accepts two numbers. I want math.random function to generate a number between 1 and the screen width. Let's apply this math.random function in our y value as well. But this time, it's not gonna be width. It's gonna be screen height. Alright, let's press our power button, see what happens. If we press this button over here, nothing happens. This is because we didn't actually call the button press function in our update. So I want you to put that in the update function. Let's see what happens. Oh my god, what's happening here? This happens because the update function actually runs 60 times a second. So when you hold down your power button, this button, it actually prints 60 circles per second. We don't want that. We only want to add one circle if we press the button once. To do this, go over your button press and instead of button state, I want you to change it to button down and see what it does. So if I press this button over here, as you can see, even if I'm holding it, it doesn't add a circle 60 times a second. That's very good. Alright, let's go to the update function and put this line of code over here. Print hashtag circle table. What this does, it tells us how many items in our table. So if I press this button over here, it tells us the number of items in our table currently. As you can see, there are multiple numbers here. This is because our code is actually printing 60 times a second. If you wanted to clear the console after every frame, what you can do is go here and press enter, and I want you to type the command clear. And let's see what happens. As you can see, it only prints one number per frame. That's what we want. And if I go over the button over here and press this multiple times, we can see that the table is increasing in value. Let's explore more on libraries. The math library is built into the Lua programming language, so we don't need to type in require. Require is a Lua keyword if you want to access libraries outside CPU0.lua. In this tutorial, we're not gonna be accessing external libraries because the math library is the only library we need. The math.random function is kinda tedious to write math.random. So what I'm gonna do is go over on the top here and I'm gonna make a new variable. I'm gonna name this random. And I'm gonna set this equal to math.random. One thing to note here is you don't need parentheses or the compiler would give you an error. And let's go back on our code. And instead of math.random, let's just make it random, like this. And let's run our code and see what happens. As you can see, same functionality. This tutorial is gonna be using the sine and cosine. So I want you to add that as well. So local sine is equal to math.sine without parentheses on, because this is gonna give us an error. Local cosine is gonna be math.cos, and we're gonna use the pi as well. So I want you to make a variable and set that to math.pi. Alright, one thing that I forgot to mention you is what is the difference between I pairs and pairs? Let's continue on our gadget. The other thing that I want to do to our gadget is make our circles move, as it's just stationary. It's boring in my opinion, so I want all the circles to go right. We can implement that by making a new function. Let's call this function circleMove. As you can see, I'm not gonna put any parameters in our circleMove function. Here, let's type in for I, comma, in I pairs. I'm actually gonna put do here first because it doesn't wanna autocorrect. So if I put do there, if I type something, it shows like a list of things I can choose from. Circle, table, okay. So let's close this like that. Actually, I forgot something here. I'm gonna put in circle. You can name this whatever you want. You can name this V, C, something, but I want to make it readable, so I'm gonna put circle. Inside our for statement, let's start by typing circle.pos. And let's make this equal to circle.pos. What this does is it makes circle.pos equal to circle.pos, which coincidentally changes nothing. It doesn't change a thing. But if I go here and plus this with vec2, x is 1, y is 0, and press the power button, you can see nothing happens. This is because we forgot to put circleMove in our update function. So let's actually copy and paste that. And let's see what happens if we press the power button. Oh my goodness, what is actually happening here? If you actually didn't know, our update function, or let's say what happens if one frame advances, is every frame it doesn't actually clear the screen. What is essentially it's doing is it's just drawing over the screen over and over again. To fix this, I want you to put vid.clear. It's actually a method for vid. And let's press the power button. As you can see, it gave us an error. This is because we need to put some kind of color inside. So I'm just gonna put color black. Okay, so let's try this. And voila! The circles are moving right. And about this color.black, I don't want to type color.black if I want to refer to a color. So I want to shorten this like c.black. That will give us an error. This is because we didn't tell the program what is C. So let's go up and here type something like local C is equal color. Since C is now our color, we can replace color with C right now. So let's find those insert things and replace it with C. Cool. This is cool and all, but it's kind of bland, right? We want to add gravity. Remember that velocity vector that I put inside the circle table, which is this velocity vec2? Let's actually implement that to our move function. So instead of circle.pause is equal to circle pause dot vec to x1 and y0, I want you to delete this and put plus circle dot velocity vec2. Okay, so with this code, let's press the power button. Nothing happens, but if we go here, for example, this is magenta, and change this x value to 1, you can see that the magenta is moving right. Okay, let's actually find the other circles. I find out that yellow is here, and I want to move it up. So on the y value, remember that minus values means up. So now yellow is supposed to go up. Let's find red and move it to the left. So -1 here. Cool. Green, I want to move that down. So I'm just gonna put 1 in the y value. As you can see, this is really cool already. But do you know what's cooler than linear movement? That's right, gravity. Let's actually apply gravity in our code. To do that, let's go on our move circle function and add a new code. Go over here, and I want you to put circle.pause is equal to circle.pause minus vec2 0, -1. And actually, what we can do is make this a plus and here 1. This is basically the same thing. If you plus the y value, it makes things go down. So yeah, there's no point of making this minus and making this -1 over here. Let's try this code. Actually, let's make this 0.1. That's too low. Let's make this 0.7 and observe. If you observe how things fall in real life, you can actually see that object doesn't actually fall in a linear motion. When it starts to fall, it's actually accelerating. But in our code over here, the falling motion is actually linear. It's actually not changing over time. So what I want you to do is go over Google, and I want you to search falling object formula. You can see that the velocity is equal to gravitational constant and a function of time. Let's apply that thing to our code. So what we learned is time is actually important aspect to this. So let's go over here and have time. As you can see, time is actually an unknown global variable. We actually haven't defined time. So let's go on the top and let's define what time should be. So go over here and put local time. Set that to equal 0. Let's rename this a little bit so it's a little bit easier to understand. I'm gonna name this time since start. Copy this and put that to circle move function. Since we're not really changing time since start, this will always be 0. So as you can see, our object is still moving in one direction. So if we want time since start to be counting in seconds, let's go over our update function and inside put this thing over here. Time since start equals time since start plus CPU dot delta time. And let's see what happens. Wow! That's kinda cool, right? And we know that it's not time that we only need. We need to put in the gravitational constant, which is 9.8. And let's try that. Whoa! That's really cool. On my taste, the gravitational constant is a little bit too high. So I'm gonna put that to 3 and let's test it. Whoa! Okay. If we look over here on our time since start equals time since start plus CPU delta time, it's a little bit too long because we're typing in time since start 2 times. I want you to eliminate this second time since start and the plus and move the plus over here. This is actually the same code as before, but it's neater. We can do the same thing over here because it's circle.pause equals circle.pause. We don't need that. Delete that and put the plus sign over here. If we check our code, as you can see, it's actually functioning. Since we put gravitation in our code, our gadget is much cooler right now. Now what I want you to do is modify this yellow circle. Let's go over to the code and find the yellow circle. So we found it. Let's modify the y value to -4. That should make it shoot a little bit higher, like that. Too high in my expectation. Let's make it 2 or something like that. Whoa! Alright, so what if I go over here and change x to 1 instead of 0? Whoa! It shoots to the right. How about -1? Working with gravity is really fun. I kind of want to make the circles a little bit bigger, so let's go to the update function and change this size to 12 or something to make the circle bigger. Alright. Actually, the gravitational constant is a little bit too low. How about let's set it to 4? Cool. Let's go over to the top and go to our circle table. I don't want to overcomplicate things, but let's talk about trigonometry. Yes, you can make games without trigonometry, but I suggest that you learn trigonometry as it's actually really helpful if you want to make games. I'm gonna have myself explain to you trigonometry at a later point of time. That's it for the video, guys. If you like the tutorial, make sure to like and subscribe. Part 2 is where I explain on how to make circles appear in a random time. We're gonna use like an extensive amount of trigonometry, so don't miss that out. I'm never gonna make an hour-long tutorial again.